Hello, geometry students. Mr. Gazzato here, and this is page 21 of your notes packet. And if you watched the introductory video, we talked about different ways to justify congruent triangles. The first way, and this is just a summary page, the first way to justify congruent triangles is side, side, side. So if three sides of one triangle are congruent to three sides of another triangle, then the two triangles are congruent. So I'm just going to draw a picture here. I have three sides congruent in the blue triangle. And if I have three other sides, even if I were to rotate or translate the graph, if three sides of one triangle are congruent to three sides of another triangle, then they are congruent triangles. So this is called side, side, side. And that's the typical picture that you might see. The second way to justify congruent triangles is side, angle, side. Here the angle must be between the two sides. So in terms of a picture, we have a side, the angle here that I just marked, and a side. This is the diagram for side, angle, side. So if you have two sides and the included angle, you will always make congruent triangles. So this is the typical picture that you will see. So I'm just going to draw that again here. Side, angle, side. So this is the picture for side, angle, side. The third way that we talked about in the introductory video was angle, side angle. Here, the side is between the two angles. So I'm going to draw this picture here. So we have angle, side, angle. So that side is between the two angles. And I'm going to highlight that side. It's between those two angles. So in that particular problem, we have angle, side, angle. And I'm just going to draw the picture here. So angle, side, angle. Now there are word definitions or words for each of these boxes. I'm going to show that to you at the end here. But there are words that go along with each of these. Okay, the fourth way to justify congruent triangles is angle, angle, side. So here, the side is not between the two angles. We have angle, angle, side. Notice that side is not between the two angles. So I'm going to highlight that side in yellow. Notice that side is not between the two angles. So this is the typical picture that you will see for angle, angle, side. So angle, angle, side. Angle, angle, side. Okay, so these are 4 of the 5 ways to justify congruent triangles. The fifth way is at the top here, and it's called hypotenuse leg. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. The fifth way to justify congruent triangles is called hypotenuse leg. So I'm going to draw this right triangle over here just to do some vocabulary. You have to have a right angle. Across from the right angle is always called the hypotenuse. And the other two sides that are attached to the right angle are called legs. So a little bit of vocabulary. Hypotenuse is always across from the 90, and the other two sides are called legs. So the typical picture that you might see for this one is a picture like this. You have the hypotenuse marked, and you have a leg marked. And then here I'm just going to rotate the triangle. I have the hypotenuse marked and the leg marked. So this is the picture for hypotenuse leg. So here on the screen you will see So here on the screen you will see the 5 ways to justify congruent triangles. And in the middle column here that I just highlighted, like at the top, the yellow, there are the words that go along with the picture. And then I just want to highlight for side angle side, the angle, notice the angle is between the two sides. For angle side angle here in blue, notice the side is between the two angles. In contrast, for angle angle side, notice this side is not between the two angles. So these are the 5 ways to justify congruent triangles. And then the 2 ways that do not work that we talked about in the introductory video are angle 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 and side side angle. So these methods do not work. So let's take a look at the bottom of page 21 and determine if these triangles are congruent. So if you look at problem number 1, and I'm going to make this a little bit larger. If you look at problem number 1, we talked about the reflexive property. So I can mark the reflexive property. This side BC is in common. So now we have side, side, side for the picture on the left, or the triangle on the left, and side, side, side. So these are congruent by side, side, side. And I'm even going to put the letters in the correct order. So I'm going to say triangle ABC is congruent to triangle. Now the letters need to be in the correct order. So ABC would be congruent to triangle DBC. If you take a look at problem number 2, you always mark vertical angles. So always mark vertical angles. I'm going to write that down because I think that's important. So always mark vertical angles congruent. So now if you look at problem number 2, we have side, we have the angle in the middle, and side. Side, angle, side. So these are congruent by side, angle, side. And I'm going to put the letters in order. So I'm going to say X, A, Y, congruent to triangle. Now, X started along the 1 tick mark. So I need to start along the 1 tick mark on the other triangle. So that would be triangle V, A, W. So in number 2, always mark vertical angles congruent. In number 1, always mark the reflexive property. So always mark the reflexive property. I'm going to write that down. So let's take a look at problem number 3. If you look at problem number 3, again, you get to mark the reflexive property. So I'm going to put those blue marks. So on the triangle on the left, I have angle, angle, side. For the triangle on the right, angle, angle, side. So these are congruent by angle, angle, side. And I'm even going to say triangle. Oh, these are not labeled, so I'm not going to say the letters. What about number 4? Here we got some information. Instead of tick marks, we have numbers. If you look at, you got 150, that's an angle. You have the side tick marked, and then you got this angle of 15 degrees. In the triangle at the bottom, you got the angle of 150, you have the side, and you have the angle. So these are congruent by angle, side, angle. If you want to pause the screen and try problems 5 and 6 on your own, go ahead. So in number 5, I get to mark the reflexive property, those 2 green marks. This is a right triangle. This is the hypotenuse. And on the other triangle, this is the hypotenuse. And down the middle, that is the leg. So this is the example of hypotenuse leg. You can see the reflection between the 2 triangles. And then problem number 6, remember we have parallel lines here by that red mark. So in parallel lines, we know alternate interior angles are congruent. So this angle in blue is congruent to the angle up at the top. So KLN is congruent to MNL. We also have the reflexive property to mark. So I have the gray marks there. So I know those are congruent. And if I were to continue to look at this particular problem, I have the blue angles and I got the one side. And I'm going to change the color on the reflexive property so it into red just so it's a little easier to see. So I have angle side. Well, angle side does not justify congruent triangles. So these triangles are not congruent. Let's go to the next page. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Number 7. Part A. Name the included angle for each pair of sides. So remember when we were doing side, angle, side, it was important that we knew what we meant by the included angle. So for part A, if I have PQ and PR, I'm going to highlight them in yellow. The included angle there is angle P. I'm going to erase this. For part B, I got RQ, I'm going to highlight it, and PR. So the included angle there is angle R. And then I'm going to erase that. For the third example, PQ and RQ, the included angle is angle Q. It's in between those two sides. So angle Q. If you were to look for a pattern here in problem number 7A, you might notice that the P is in common. In B, you might notice the R is in common and the included angle is R. And in part C, the Q is common between those two segments and it's angle Q. So let's take a look at this practice here. Write which postulates, if any, can be used to prove the triangles are congruent. If no triangles can be proved congruent, write not congruent or neither. I'm probably going to write not congruent. So number 1, I get to mark the reflexive property. And then this is an angle, this is a side, and this is a side. In the other triangle, I got angle, a side, and a side. Well, you might be tempted to say side, side, angle, but that doesn't work. So these triangles are not congruent. Okay. In problem number 2, we have the 3's are the same. So I'm going to highlight these. We have the 4's are the same. And we have the angle there. Now, people are often tempted to say hypotenuse leg when you see the right angle. But be careful here. Here we got a side, the included angle, and the side. So we have the side, the included angle, and the side. So this is an example of side, angle, side. In problem number 3, we have this side, and that angle. We have a side, and an angle. So looking at this particular example, we have side, side, angle, and this is similar to problem number 1. It does not work, so these triangles are not congruent. Okay, even though they look like they are congruent, they are not congruent because side, side, angle does not work. So don't use the picture to make a justification. Okay. In the third example, or excuse me, number 4, the 7's are the same, the 4's are the same, and the 6's are the same. So this would be an example of side, side, side. Sometimes you're going to see tick marks. You'll see 1 tick mark, 1 tick mark, 2 tick marks, 2 tick marks, 3 tick marks, 3 tick marks. Now we're going to move to some algebra problems. So if you look at problem number 5, find the value of x to make the triangles congruent. Well, this would be an example of side, angle, side, side, angle, side, if the angles are congruent. So the idea here is we want the angles to be congruent for side, angle, side. So we're going to say 6x minus 27 is equal to 4x plus 7, and we're going to do the algebra. So I'm going to subtract 4x, and we'll get 2x minus 27 is equal to 7. Let's add 27 to both sides. So 2x is equal to 34, and then we're going to divide by 2. So x will be 17. We didn't ask you to find the angle, but if you were to plug in 17 into the 6x minus 27, you will get 75. And to check it, if you plug 17 into 4x plus 7, you should also get 75. So when I do that on my calculator, I do get 75 in both cases. So if you wanted to check this, I'm going to write that down. You could do 6 times 17 minus 27, you get 75 degrees. And 4 times 17 plus 7 is 75 degrees, so you know you did the problem correctly. All right, let's move to page 23. So in 23, the idea, and I did some of this earlier, which methods prove the triangles are congruent? Let's circle them below. So angle, side angle works. Side, side angle is the example that does not work. Side, angle, side works. Side, side works. Angle, angle, angle does not work. Angle, angle, side works. And hypotenuse, leg works. So those are the 5 ways that justify congruent triangles. And then down at the bottom, we want to look at these triangles and determine if they are congruent or not. And we also want to put the letters in the correct order. I always start out with if they're congruent first. So when I look at these problems, I kind of start out with this because. So are the triangles, and then I go back and answer the previous parts. If the triangles are not congruent, we will not fill out the other part. So in problem top left here, I'm going to make this a little bigger. Top left, we got angle, angle, side, angle, angle, side. That is one of the methods, so I'm going to put angle, angle, side. And then the idea is we want to put the letters in the correct order. So if we go triangle ACB, then the other triangle has to be angle AFE. In top right question, we have an example of angle, side, angle. Notice that side's between the two angles, and then angle, side, angle. So this is the picture for angle, side, angle. And if I were to put the letters in the right order, I can go triangle ACB. And triangle ACB would be congruent to triangle YXW. Now it's perfectly fine if you did something like this. Triangle ABC is congruent to triangle YWX. As long as the letters match up, you could have different orders, but the A's got to match up with the Y. So the A's always got to match up with the Y. The B's always got to match up with the W. And then the C needs to match up with the X. So you could have different orders, but the letters need to be in the correct order. Let's take a look at middle left problem on this page. So here we got a side, and an angle. In the bottom picture, we got a side, and an angle. So side, side, angle does not work. It's not one of our choices. So I will not be filling any of these out. And in fact, the question says they are not congruent. So I'll just circle not congruent. Going up at the top, I probably forgot to circle congruent in this one. And I forgot to circle congruent in that one. All right, let's take a look at the middle right. So middle right, we have side, angle side. Notice that angle's between the two sides. Side, angle side. So here I'm going to write side, angle, side. And we just got to put the letters in the correct order. So if I say triangle A, B, C, then I need to say triangle D, E, F. And those are congruent, so I'm going to circle congruent. All right, last two problems on page 23. This is side, side, side. For DEF, we got side, side, side. So those triangles are congruent. The reason is side, side, side. And I want to put the letters in the correct order. I could go alphabetically, A, B, C there. And then on the other one, it is D, E, F. Don't assume that both triangles will always be in alphabetical order. And then the last question here, we have this angle marked, and that angle marked. And we learned that angle, angle, angle is not one of our ways to justify congruent triangles, even though sometimes in the pictures they look congruent. Angle, angle, angle does not work, so I'm going to circle not congruent, and I won't fill out the rest. So hopefully you found this video helpful for pages 21 to 23.